Welcome back to Serger Tip Clips. I had a couple of questions from people about doing wire edge ribbon, and I thought that would make a great topic to do a tip clip on. So I am going to show you how I created this bow for a basket that I'll put rolled up silverware. We're going to have an end of summer cookout pretty soon with some friends, and I made a coordinating little basket liner with it as well, and I'll roll up silverware, put it in napkins, and they can grab it right in here as they go through the food line. But it's a really fun, nice way to get exactly the look that you want for your table decor. But also there are other ways that I use them, and most of the time it's on wreaths, whether they're seasonal for autumn or Halloween, Thanksgiving. Going into Christmas time, I use them on those, and even on springtime wreaths. So there are a lot of different things that you can do with it. I've also used it on little napkin rings as well, and it's kind of pretty on those too. So I will be working on the Bernina L890, and I am using foot number C17, which is the cording foot, and I'll show you how to get set up with that and put the wire in. It's very easy right at the machine. And I like to use 26 gauge wire. You can find this at most sewing stores and craft stores. If you look, oftentimes in their jewelry making department, you can find the different gauges of wire. Let's go over to the machine and take a look at the setup. And I will, as I said, show you how to get the wire into the foot and create your own beautiful wire edge ribbon. Before we look at the foot, I want to give you the setup for my stitch. On the L890, I'm on stitch number 8, a 3-thread rolled hem stitch. My right needle and upper looper are on a default setting of 4 for the tensions, and the lower looper tension is on 7. I like to crank it up a few notches just for the look of it, and that's my preference, but you can leave it on the default settings and it'll be perfectly fine. I have Serger cone thread in my right needle and lower looper, but I have decorative thread, 12 weight Wonderfill Egyptian cotton spaghetti thread in my upper looper. And for a rolled hem, I always call the upper looper thread the money thread, because that's the one that shows the most on a rolled hem stitch. My stitch length is 1.2. I've tested it, and I do like that stitch length for this weight thread. But again, you'll test your thread and set it to the preference you like for that. Now, I am going to show you this on a short piece of a lighter color fabric, because I think it will show up better. When I did a test video with the other one, I thought it didn't contrast well enough in the video to give you an idea of what I'm doing. Now, on the L890, you can swing the presser foot out, which is really nice for loading in the wire into this particular foot. So what I do, and I put red wire in here because I think it shows up better, I am swinging it under the presser foot, and I am getting it into this little groove on top of the foot and swinging it up and over. There's like a little U or a horseshoe in the front of the foot that I can rest the wire in, and I can pull it forward. I'm going to leave a couple of inches of the wire in back of the presser foot though. I'm going to push this back so that I can get ready to stitch. But I leave a couple of inches in back of the presser foot because I want to be able to hold onto the wire, which is 26 gauge. You can test the wire weights on your machine. Just find one that travels smoothly without dragging in the foot. 26 works well. I've gone down to 24 gauge, which is just a little bit thicker and heavier wire, but I don't really like to go much heavier than that because I do find that sometimes it tends to drag on different machines and kind of hold back a little bit. Now I can leave my knife engaged right here. I can leave that active because this wire is traveling on a guided path. But the whole key to wire edge ribbon is to make sure that your needle falls to the left of that wire, because the stitch has to form around the wire and on the edge of the fabric to hold. So the wire is kind of between where the needle is on the left and the loopers are on the right of it, so that that stitch encases the wire as it's going along. Now, this fabric is a little bit lighter color and it doesn't really match the color of the thread, but again, I thought for contrast it would work well. You can cut off as much as you want. On my actual ribbon that I am going to be making, I'm using a double layer of fabric. There are two coordinating fabrics, as are these, but you can use a single layer as well and get a very nice effect. I kind of like for a bow to see two different fabrics, because when you tie it, both will show on the public side. So it's kind of nice to have that. So I am holding on to both my wire, that's the red one that you see in back of the foot, and the turquoise thread chain. And let's give this a go. I'm just going to trim off an arbitrary amount on the side though. And you'll notice that even though I'm stitching on the fabric, I'm keeping my hand on the edge of the fabric just to make sure that that wire is traveling along as I stitch. Metal against a metal foot doesn't like to move quite as easily, and that's why I do that. And as I said, this is just a short piece of fabric. It's about 11 or 12 inches long. Now, I always recommend having an inexpensive pair of craft scissors to clip your wire for any excess length. Don't use your good shears. But look how beautiful that is. That's on one side. Here's that extra wire that I had at the beginning, and that can just be clipped off. So I'm going to go and do the second edge as well, and we'll take a look at this when we're done. But look how pretty that is. And the nice thing about this with fabric, and here's my other side, really pretty on both sides. So you can see that if I tied a bow, you'd be able to see that pretty contrasting fabric. And I'll show you that on my actual other fabric after I finish this little sample up. I'm going to set up for the second side. And if you want to follow along with me, that's great. I'm going to pull those threads out, swing my foot out. Now that I've had that practice of the first one, it's super fast to do this. Swing it into that little indentation around that little horseshoe, pull it toward me, leaving a couple of inches in the back, and now I'm ready for the second side. And it's always good, I should have mentioned this earlier, it's always good to take a few stitches just in the wire alone to be sure that it is to the right of the needle. That's just a little added insurance for you. And if you want to stitch off any excess length of wire, if you just want to continue rather than clip it with scissors, you can certainly do that. And that's what I'll do here just to show you it's perfectly fine to do that. And I can pull out that extra length and clip it off afterward. Okay, so here we have both sides done. And sometimes the fabric bunches up a little bit, so all you have to do is kind of give it a firm tug and flatten it out and smooth it out. But we have wire on both sides of our fabric for our wire edge ribbon, so isn't that cool? And it's easier than you'd think. I thought I should show you when I am working with a longer length of fabric and wire. I like to leave my little coil of wire or a spool of wire, however yours is dispensed. I put it right in my little trim bin, and that way I don't have to hold on to it. It stays very close to where it needs to be, and it's an easy place to put it. One other tip that I have, I just finished the actual bow and you'll see that, but I always like to give myself a few extra inches of the wire and the rolled hem stitch over it at the beginning and end, only because with this technique the fabric sometimes has a tendency to kind of bunch up, and I like to give it that pull at the end, but you want to make sure that you've got enough wire to pull it onto so that you don't lose any of that length of your ribbon. Thanks for joining me today. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, leave them below and I'll get back to you quickly. And thanks for subscribing. Happy sewing and serging.